This lecture will contain analysis and potential spoilers for the film Rio Bravo, directed by Howard Hawks. Made by filmmakers who are nearing the ends of their careers, both famed comedy director Howard Hawks, who was in his 60s, and John Wayne, still the quintessential Western protagonist at age 51, managed to entertain and weave this multi-layered meditation on the nature of man. Set dressed in a vibrant, almost musical-like aesthetic, Rio Bravo is a treatise on gender politics of the 50s. But even though today's film is a big Hollywood blockbuster, it still possesses oddities that evoke the indie film. Let's just pick apart the opening scene as an example. The first 4 minutes and 45 seconds of the film, about 1/5 of a projection reel, contains no dialogue. You hear music in the opening credits that runs into the first scene. It doesn't appear to be diegetic music as we don't see a guitarist, but when Joe tosses the coin into the spittoon, it motivates a different musical cue to begin. It is very odd that there are two pieces of music overlapping like this in such an obvious manner. Also, for a comedy western, this movie starts off on a down note. Both John Wayne and Dean Martin are introduced in a very unflattering way for leading men. The former enters the scene and is knocked out in a single blow, and the latter perhaps represents the director's personal statement on alcoholism. And the leads enter the scene on foot, not on horseback, as we might expect. By now, you are well aware that films, specifically genre films, are viewed to facilitate what I like to call introspection through artistry. Movies serve a societal function. They provide us with the means to reflect. And some societal issues can be framed as political statements, like the rewriting of history, or they may manifest in what we call progressive cinema. Today's film carries a very strong progressive message, and movies tell story using a particular style. These are just a handful of the styles we've discussed. And the shorthand that artists use? That's called trope and motif. You remember those terms, right? But what do we get from this introspection and artistry? What satisfies you as an audience member? When we watch movies, through the characters, we get to experience and indirectly say the things we want to say in life. Not all of us are filmmakers, but we all have access to this shared experience. Filmmakers speak for us because we've elected them to speak with our money. Our political outlook is driven by our personal need. Howard Hawks' Rio Bravo, which was so popular he remade it twice, contains very topical, very political motifs. Motifs that remain relevant even to this day. Cultural fears, like alcoholism, prejudice, the death of the ideal. It's no big mystery to a thinking audience that the presence of hostile aliens in the science fiction genre might help us to come to terms with difficult ethical questions concerning colonization, immigration, and miscegenation. Fears of the unknown. Film noir, with its hard-boiled detectives and icy femme fatales, specifically deal with mental illness, wartime trauma, and the broken family, fears in society. Many horror films help us come to terms with trauma, vulnerability, motherhood, and aging. From a literature standpoint, these might be seen as symbolically feminine fears. To maybe extend on this idea of repeated topical motifs, I think no other genre critiques masculinity in culture, honor and cowardice, inadequacy, impotence, quite as sharply and vividly as in a Western film. Much has been said in movie reviews and other literature about perhaps the disproportionate abundance of male presence in the Western. A Mulvaean analysis might suggest that these films are only made for and only satisfy the male members of the audience. Some others would flat out say Westerns are a male genre, or that Westerns are only for the guys. But Western movies don't have appeal just because they feature cowboys. All movies have appeal because of the connection that you have to filmmakers who are making these films. Their stories are motivated by the audience's unconscious need to tackle specific concerns. And it is my view that Rio Bravo challenges traditional views of masculinity. For one thing, the way the shootout occurs at the end of the film, with the Burdettes surrendering, is actually quite pacifist for the machismo we're accustomed to with Wayne and his friends. Every man in this film seems to have something a little bit off with him. They only reluctantly embrace their duty. Walter Brennan plays an almost septuagenarian mother figure to his 3 boys, taking care of the homestead while bullets fly hazardly outside. Throughout the film, the 4 men continuously meet in their secret clubhouse to talk about their feelings. There are at least a handful of references in this movie to men crying.
Stumpy?
Yeah?
Going over to the hotel for a few minutes.
Well, if you don't come back, me and Joe'll have us a good cry.
If we put Rio Bravo within the context of other westerns you may have watched, there's quite a considerable amount of humor and loaded subtext regarding the 5 central characters, who all go by some sort of mononym or nickname: Chance, Stumpy, Dude, Feathers, Colorado. I feel like there's a motif here, where the names give us a clue as to who they really are. Anyway, behind a lot of the machismo and bravura, you have male characters that are portrayed or identified in a way that foments discussion. Here are a couple ideas for you. The motif of injury or impairment. The motif of the injured or inadequate man is a thread that runs through many westerns, and markedly in Rio Bravo. Whether it is a character who was injured in war or inexplicably ill, a recurring motif in westerns seems to be a character carrying some physical ailment or burden. Stumpy in this film suggests male obsoleteness or inadequacy, externalized as a limp. The charismatic dude, who possesses a double nickname, Borachon, is sick with drink and cannot perform his functions as an acting deputy. Looking back, if you recall, Marshal John from 40 Guns was so blind he could not recognize friend from foe. Doc Holliday, a man of medicine in Clementine, is chronically plagued with illness. In James Mangold's 3:10 to Yuma remake, Dan Evans's disenfranchised character carries a lot of pain, which is externalized as having a perpetual limp. The injury, it seems to me, is a metaphor to male impotence and weakness, the motif of homosexuality. My claim isn't that the characters in westerns are gay. It's that subtext exists where male sexuality is broken down and assessed.
I'm gonna sit right here with your brother in my lap until a United States Marshal gets here.
We recall the men dancing together at the party, as discussed in my Veracruz lecture. This scene lasts longer than the scene where the men dance with the women. In 40 Guns, all the men bathe together at Barney Cashman's motel. And in today's film, the first scene that the character Feathers meets our hero John Chance and Carlos is an interesting one.
You see? And they're not beautiful, senor. Can you make the picture how she will look?
You sure you want me to do that?
Those things have great possibilities, but not for you.
What are you doing here?
And this?
You should be in bed. Last night you slept just a little bit. But tonight, senor, you will sleep well. I will wash.
There are just so many. And what about John Chance's relationship with Dude?
I'm getting jumpy.
I'll walk along with you and hold your hand.
Get back over there where you belong.
Yes, Papa.
Anyway, I have a better idea. Tonight you sleep in my room.
But one of the most interesting angles of analysis is to see John's character as someone who, lacking self-awareness or being pressured socially, is concealing his sexuality. Angie Dickinson's character is seemingly irresistible. She is self-aware of her own beauty, as evidenced by how surprised she is that she needs to work so hard at winning over John T. Chance. She is turned down not once, but almost 3 times. I think even more fascinating is that Dude, his name which carries homosexual undertones, claims to be driven to drink because of a woman that we never see. But after realizing the paternal love his friend has for him, he manages to say this.
Me? I don't know anything about women.
Next thing you'll be telling me you don't remember one.
Man forgets. Sometimes it isn't easy. Something happens. Just forgets. In case you're interested, I have.
It's about time. I was getting awful tired of taking care of you.
If you want to jump in, I'll take care of you.
And I'm not 100% here, but I do believe Dude is the only character to refer to the sheriff as John. Much has been said, at any rate, about guns carrying sexual meaning in a Western. What is up with John T. Chance carrying his rifle around everywhere?
How come you carry a rifle?
I found somewhere faster than me with a shotgun.
Am I alone in that this movie is all about sexual symbolism? Rio Bravo is a fantastic and fun film, and relies on a lot of allegory to get its point across. Maybe you could even say that Stumpy, aged and disabled and alone, is a projection of Chance's future, and that the entire movie is about Chance steering clear of that fate. It's hard to forget Colorado Ryan, played by Ricky Nelson. His last scene in the film is to take over for Stumpy, the young replacing the old.
Stumpy, I'll watch it for you if you want to go out. Okay. Sure.
Maybe this movie has something to say about the tyranny of aging. By the way, Ricky Nelson has but one scene with his female co-star. And it isn't really sexually charged at all, even though the actor himself was a teen heartthrob. How's that for a movie that addresses the idea of male homosexuality? This scene in particular is very odd to me.
You can keep your guns, Colorado.
Thanks, Sheriff. I don't want any trouble.
Well, then don't start any.
I won't, unless I tell you first.
Rio Bravo is about camaraderie, brotherhood, and to a great extent, it is a redefinition of what it means to be a modern man. Based on a short story by B.H. McCampbell, pseudonym for Barbara Hawks, the director's daughter, and the screenwriters being Hollywood legends Jules Furthman and Lee Brackett, who, by the way, is the female screenwriter responsible for The Empire Strikes Back. I wonder if this movie might be the fresh take that began a conversation. Like Fuller's 40 Guns, this film is a love letter to the best of Westerns. It's sort of a pastiche, a mishmash of expected themes and genre stereotypes. But to take it further, Rio Bravo is a self-referential Western. 40 Guns is sort of self-referential too. Jessica Drummond laments about the dying West, as if she were also commenting on the Western as a dying genre. In Rio Bravo, both Colorado and Dude, played by real-life musicians Ricky Nelson and Dean Martin, actually whistle the theme of the movie towards the end of the film. Since characters can't normally hear film score, you wonder if the director is trying to call attention to the character's awareness of a world outside of their world. Maybe Rio Bravo isn't just a great Western. It is a commentary on the nature of the Western genre itself. Thanks for watching.